the first thing that you want to do is take off the seat. And then after that, we can move on to taking off the front, I'll call them shrouds here, the part that says the CRF there on the front of the bike. So once you have that, all the bolts taken out, that'll just come off here. This is an older bike, missing bolts, so God only knows if that white piece will come off for you guys or not. It did for me on this particular bike. Next, we're going to take off the gas tank. There's a rubber strap there. You take that off. I'm going to adjust the camera here now, and you'll be able to see the bolt on top of the gas tank. Here it is up here. So you just hollow out that piece of tube out of the where the forks, or where the handlebars go, and you take out that one bolt there on top of the gas tank. After you got that bolt out, come down here where the petcock is for turning the gas off. Turn the gas off. Save yourself that time and effort. After you have the gas off, there's a little clip here. I just found I could kind of pry it apart with a small screwdriver there and just pull it back towards the carburetor side of that hose, because that is your fuel line from your petcock there, and it goes right to your carburetor. So when you can haul that clamp off, and then you can haul that off of the petcock. As you can see me here, I just put the screwdriver in past, not to use a sharp part so I don't damage the hose, and just kind of pry it off there until I can wiggle it off with my fingers. Once you have that line pulled off, you can get an 8mm. Now, don't rely on me telling you what size the bolts are, but I believe this is an 8mm here to take the petcock off of the chassis of the bike. Another little trick that I like to do is put the bolt back in the hole where it came from. That way it keeps them organized and you can't lose them. Now, I tightened it up there kind of on that bit of the bracket there, so it kind of got stuck and I had to pull it out. But after you get that done, the tank will lift just straight out like that. Now, I found it easiest if you loosen up this bolt here along with the one on the other side that I'll show you, and that'll almost allow you to fold up the rear frame of the bike. So I'm just going to loosen this up here. These were really tight, probably a good thing because it was the chassis of the bike. But just loosen that one up, and of course take it out as well. And same thing with this side, loosen it all the way up. This one was tight as well. And take that bolt out. After that bolt is out, you have to undo the muffler, so I'll show you that here. There's a smaller 10mm bolt right here in this exhaust. And there's a bolt up here. This one was a 1/2 inch, obviously modified. So I don't know if it's going to be another 10 for you guys or a 12mm. But there was a 1/2 inch bolt put in there afterwards on this particular bike. Like I said, this one's an older one. There was a couple bolts missing, a couple bolts that were different than factory. So that's what was there on this bike. But we left the exhaust on the bike after I got this bolt. I was trying to take it off of the socket, but we left the bolt or the exhaust on. I've seen a couple people take it off completely, but we left the exhaust on. So here there's a hose clamp, I'll call it, up here on your air box on the end of your carburetor. So I just loosened that up a good bit, and then after I had it loosened up, I was able to use a screwdriver and kind of pry it off of the back of the screwdriver or back of the carburetor. It was pretty rough getting it off, to be honest. It was even harder to get it back on. I found that if you work from the top and the right-hand side of the bike as if you were on it, to put it back on. But I'll explain that later. And then you can just pull up the back of the bike. So I put a little piece of rope around the handlebars with a, I'm going to call it a carabiner or something like that on it. And I just hooked that into the little spot there that goes behind the battery. And that is what I use there to hold that up out of the way. Next, here I took out the clutch cable. So I used the back of a screwdriver to push the clutch in to be able to just flick the cable out with my finger. And that was off, and that's all that took there. The next part of this job is there's two 8mm bolts that hold the starting motor down into the casing. They were a little bit annoying to do with the wrench, but there's one right there on the right side of the starter. And once you get it so loose, I use my 2 fingers like that to twist it out and take it out the rest of the way. I just find that a little bit easier than using the wrench the whole time. This shot isn't quite the best, but there's a little wire that goes down here, and the other bolt is right there. Again, you can loosen it up and use your 2 fingers like that and just try to get in there with it. But it's right there along the same height and on the back of the starter. It has the little wire on it. You could almost see it better in the other clip than this, but this top-down angle kind of allows you to see me working on it as I'm doing it. Once that bolt is loose, you can haul the wire off and keep that bolt somewhere safe that you're not going to lose it, because it is kind of important. There's a little bracket there that you can now pull out, and I just kind of moved everything around that was there and tried to get it out of the way. This is me just trying to wiggle the starter to see if it would move, but just take that and just move it around somewhere and get it in and out of your way. Next up, there's a little rubber cap there on top of your starting motor. That's for the that's your main power to your starter. So again, I use that big screwdriver to pry that rubber cap off, and then you can get at the bolt that holds the wire on. I changed up the angle there for you a little bit so you can see it. The lighting isn't quite as good, but I believe it's a 10 mil to get that nut off of that wire. Again, little 2-finger method to haul that nut off. Yeah, get that nut off, and then you can just lift the wire up off of that stud. Next up, I took out the camshaft chain tensioner, I believe is what this is. Don't hold me to that. I don't know if that's actually what that is or not. It was under some tension there, so the bolts were in there pretty snug. There is definitely some kind of spring pressure in there, so I would highly advise, you don't need to take out this middle bolt, ignore that completely. But the 2 outside ones do have to come out, and kind of just go back and forth between them. So you can see me take out this one completely. This is some voiceover magic here. Don't take them one out like this, because then the other one's just going to jam. Kind of just take your time and go back and forth between them. And like I said, you don't need to take out that middle one. Once you have them all out, that kind of just pulls out, and put that somewhere safe. Don't damage the little gasket that's there, and put that somewhere where it's not going to get damaged or anything. You just give it a little twist, I found, and it'll come right on out. Next up, there's these 2 little clamps here for the carburetor boot, I guess that it is. So just loosen those up till that bolt comes loose on both of them. And then you get the same flat top, and just kind of take your time. Try not to damage the rubber there, and just pry the carburetor off of the cylinder head there. So I found it a little bit easier if you get a little screwdriver and almost rotate the starting motor to the left a little bit. I'll put a little clip in here to show what I mean. You can kind of see how I'm rotating it up like that. I found that helped a lot. I then just kind of wiggled it. I went over to the other side of the bike and put the screwdriver on the housing of the starting motor, and just kind of hit the head of the, or not the head of the screwdriver, but the handle of the screwdriver with my hand, and you'll kind of see this start motor shake here down a little bit, and that's just me wedging it out. See that? And just kind of slides out past where the camshaft chain tensioner goes. And then I pulled the carburetor completely all the way off. And after hitting the starting motor out from the opposite side, you can almost just wiggle everything around in there. It is a bit of a pain, not going to lie, but you can wiggle that start motor up and out of there. Then once you get the carburetor fully off, you can see it just kind of wiggles up and out. And then you can replace it, or I guess rebuild it, or whatever you're going to do with it. And now the reassembly is kind of just the opposite process. You could just kind of have to wiggle that back in there, try to get all the splines to line up, and move the carburetor out of the way, and just put that back into where she belongs. It was the same kind of process of putting it in there on an angle, pushing it in tight, and then rotating it back to the way she was supposed to be. And then I think I gave it a couple of hits with the screwdriver here. Yep, see? Just a screwdriver on a screwdriver. This is where the fun started happening here with the rubber boots. This part wasn't too bad, getting the carburetor back on the engine. There's lots of room back there. You could easily just wiggle it around in a circle like that and slide it down over, and that went on pretty easily. Once it slid on all the way, take your screwdriver, move that hose out of the way if you need to, and tighten those clamps back up. Then you can put this back on. Make sure your gasket's there. You can kind of just put that on tight, close enough to get one started, or one bolt started, and then you can go get the other bolt started. It is a little bit of a tight space, but it's actually not too difficult. And then once you get them both started, you can turn the top one a couple times, you know what I mean, and then go to the bottom one, go back and forth, and tighten them up evenly so it goes in straight. One thing I might recommend is this wire. Put that on before you put your carburetor back on. I kind of done that in the wrong order and struggled to get my fingers in there to get the nut on there, and struggle even more putting the rubber back over the stud that's in your electric motor. For whatever reason, I guess I pushed the rubber cap back too far, and I really struggled with that. Once you unhook that and start laying it down, you're going to have to pull that end of the air box to the left-hand side of the bike as if you were sitting on it, because that rubber air box actually hits the spring. So you can see me here, put a couple fingers in it, and you can lay it down past the rear shock. This is the wrong angle to show you, but I kind of struggled putting this on at first because the bottom of that boot and this side were fitting on. But when you're putting the back end of the bike back down, make sure that the top of that boot goes over the carburetor and the right side. And then it really went on extremely simply after. I struggled with this for, I'd say, a solid 10 minutes before I picked the bike back up and made sure the top of it went down first, and it went on within seconds. Next thing you want to do then is put that first bolt with the wire back in. Just get it started in there. Little two-finger method in there again. The bolt that goes to that wire, the bracket slides around that. Once you get that going, you can just put this in finger tight and then tighten down this one and slide your bracket into place. That's pretty self-explanatory. I done a couple first revolutions there, loosening it up, but ignore that. Once you got those two bolts nice and tight, you can go on to putting the clutch cable back in. So I moved the gas line back up out of the way, and I just used my fingers. I didn't use the handle this time. I just pushed it in, and I was able to get the cable in that little, I don't know what they're called. I'll just call it a little cable holder, just like that. And it grabbed it a little bit, and then I used my other finger and just pushed it in. The clutch cable's back on. Finishing up there now, we're going to put the gas tank back in. So you want to make sure your gas lines go down a route the way that they were. Make sure there's no cables or nothing being squat, and just kind of make sure the gas tank is sat back the way it was. That stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Take our little bolt back out there now and put the petcock back on the appropriate mounting spot there on the chassis and snug it up. And then you can grab your gas line there and put it back up over that part of the petcock and put your clamp back up over the hose there so it stays on that. Getting in the process now, putting everything back together. Put in that bolt and finger tight, and use your 10 mil and snug it right up nice and tight. Don't forget to put that rubber strap back on that holds the back of your gas tank down, and your seat actually as well, because your seat attaches to your gas tank. Starting back now with the aftermarket 1/2-inch bolt. Thread that back into the rear chassis of the bike. Then we want to snug up the 10 mil up front as well as the 1/2 inch out back. And then we want to put the two lower bolts back in for the rear, I'll call it a subframe, the rear subframe for your bike. And do the exact same thing on the other side. Put that bolt back on in. After you got those two bolts back in and tightened, there's that bolt up here. I'm not sure if I told you guys to loosen that up or not, but there was a bolt up there, and that's how that rear subframe swings up. It's just right there on the top of that frame, so tighten that back up. Then after you got all that done, you want to snug all your plastics back on. Obviously, I didn't film putting the plastics back on and just starting bolts, but go back around and tighten and put in all those bolts for your plastics. And I'm still doing some maintenance, so I didn't show how to put the seat back on, but that's pretty basic. After that, you're all done. You got your plastics back on, your seat back on, you're good to go. You have your start motor replaced, and hopefully that solved your issue. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful. There was a couple of videos there showing how to do it on the 450X, showing that you had to rotate it to hollow out a small bolt there, but a couple differences on the 250X, so I wanted to make a little video just so I could watch what I was doing again, and to post it up for you guys in case anybody else needed to do this. So I hope you guys found something in this video helpful, and thank you for watching.